there! Today I'm going to share some tried and true acrylic paint tips and techniques to help you take your artwork to the next level. From essential painting supplies to helping you solve some common problems painters run into, I've got you covered.
Oh yeah!
And whether you're a beginner or an experienced artist, there's something here for everyone, so grab your brushes and let's get started. Before we dive into painting tips and techniques, let's talk a little bit about a few essential supplies you'll need besides your choice of acrylic paints and brushes. If you'd like more information on what paints and brushes I like to use, you can check out the video in the description below. First up, a water spray bottle can be one of your best friends while using acrylic paints, especially during the warmer summer months. I love my spray bottle because it helps keep my acrylic paint wet as I'm painting, so especially during the summer and the warmer months when your paint's going to dry up a little bit quicker on you on your palette before you can even get it to your canvas. I love this sprayer because I can just get a little bit of water on my paint and it'll keep my paint wet enough so I can continue painting and I don't have to be in a huge hurry because my paint will stay wet. Next up, your paint palette. Don't you hate it when you're working on a painting and you have to stop to take a break or move on from it for the day and you still have a whole bunch of paint left on your palette and you don't want it to go to waste? A stay wet palette will help solve this painter's problem for you. My paint will literally stay wet for up to a month with this palette if I keep it in my fridge and I spritz it a little bit with water here and there. This has saved me so much money and the artist's guilt about tossing leftover paint.
Yeah!
This next supply might seem obvious, but I feel like we should talk about it anyway, and that's your paint water. It's really good if you can have 2 cups of water for when you're painting. So you'll have a water cup for the dark paints, and then you'll have a water cup for the light paint, so that when I'm dipping my brush into the water, I'm not getting a bunch of blue water in my brush because we're going to use white next. Using these basic painting supplies will make your life a lot easier and solve a couple of common problems you might run into while using acrylic paint. Let's discuss a few other common problems painters run into while using them, and then we'll dive into some fun techniques you can use. Is it hot where you're painting? The heat will not only dry out the paint like we discussed, but it will cause another common problem. It's kind of hot here today, so I'm needing to add a little bit more water to my brush more than usual. If it's like raining where you're at or if it's cold, you probably won't need as much water for your brush. But if your brush starts dragging on the canvas and it's not just a nice smooth stroke, then you know you need to add a little bit of water to your brush. But of course, don't go overboard with it. You don't want to end up with a sopping paintbrush, which will lead to puddles of paint. Are your paintbrushes losing their shape and bristles going crazy? Definitely another common painter's problem. Don't ever want to leave your paintbrushes in your cup of water. This is what I'm talking about right here. You don't ever want to do this.
No, God! No, God, please, no!
And just leave your brushes in there because you're going to ruin your brushes. You're going to ruin the shape of the brushes. The bristles are going to be just sitting in water, so it's just not good for your brush. What I like to do when I'm done with a brush is I don't want the paint to dry on the brush before I get the chance to clean it out. So you want your brushes to be pretty wet.
I'm under the water. Please help me.
Like soak them pretty good into that water cup. Don't wipe off any excess water. Just put soaking wet brushes, like a wet rag or a wet paper towel. You can just keep your brushes in there so they stay wet until you're ready to wash them, so your paintbrushes don't get ruined. Taking care of your brushes will ultimately save you money on having to buy more, and it's a really easy thing to do. One common issue is muddy colors, which happens when you overmix your paints. To avoid this, limit the number of colors you mix at once and clean your brush between colors. Now let's get into some basic techniques. First up, we have double loading your brush. Double loading is basically when you get 2 different colors on one brush. So I'm going to get a darker blue on there and I'm going to get some of the lighter blue on there just so I have some variation in my background. As an artist who loves to paint landscapes, the next technique is one of my favorites to use. We have the dry brush technique. This involves using a dry brush with a small amount of paint to create a scratchy textured effect. I really love using this effect for painting grass and trees. It's also a really fun technique to use to add texture, especially with abstract paintings. But the biggest technique tip I can give to you about using acrylic paints is to layer it. What I mean by layering is you want to start with a base layer and build up your colors gradually. Layering will add depth and dimension to your work.
The more you can layer it, the better it's gonna look.
For more art advice and art tutorials, click on this playlist right here. And if you haven't yet, make sure you subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. Bye friends, live and love art!